Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 12th edition of the India Conference at Harvard. India Conference has almost become a ritual here in the Northeast America, and we see people coming in from all parts of not just the East Coast, but also from the West Coast. We're delighted to have all of you here and the distinguished guests as well. Exactly 1 year back, I was one of the student attendees here, and I clearly remember the electric fever that we had in this room when everybody was anticipating as to what is going to happen with the elections. There were sessions after sessions, not just the speakers, the audience were on the edge. Everybody was anticipating that this change is going to finally come. India is going to finally gain the momentum that it has lost. 1 year hence, we are here convening again. One thing it is said that you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. And prose tends to be dull, boring, arduous, tedious. It's a tough job. And we don't have we don't have the patience for waiting for the results. We want instant gratification from our politicians. And that has been the case and has increasingly been the case. So today and across the 2 days of the conference, we are going to have more than 100 speakers speaking on a wide variety of topics, not just the government policies, but also private sector intervention and how India can march forward on the global path to leadership. Today, the plenary session here is on the future of politics in the age of new media. New media as a concept is a very broad, in a broad sense, it takes care of not just the regular channels of media or social media, but also all the agents that are involved in conveying the message from the representing class to the represented class. So it could be political cadres, professional volunteers who are actively taking part in the political process and the electoral process. So what we are trying to understand in this plenary session is how has the political fabric in India changed over the past 2 or 3 years? And what do seasoned politicians, guests here, think about the future course of politics? So before I just hand over the floor to them, I have a quick announcement. We are actively going to follow tweets that are made from the conference, and the hashtag for that is ICH2015. So you can use this hashtag, and we're going to monitor that, and we're going to come up with some interesting thoughts and ideas that we'll display on the screen. Second thing is there are 5 easels around the corner. There's some interesting idea generation opportunities where you can just write down on sticky notes what do you think about the conference and the ideas. So I'll just open the floor. I'll introduce the moderator, Dr. Rajiv Deshpande. He is the political editor of Times of India. To you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Good morning and welcome, all of you. We start the keynote address. We go like this. I start with a brief introduction of our guests today, this morning. Not that they need much by way of introduction. And after that, we get on to our discussion of the subject at hand. We are a little late, but we'll go on for about an hour. And after which, for about 40 minutes, we'll be open to questions from all of you. We look forward to that. So to start with, on my right is Mr. Ram Madhav. Mr. Ram Madhav is National General Secretary of the BJP. He has been in public life for some time. Earlier, he was very much a a person in the sense that he represented very often the RSS's views to the media, and the media got back to him on that. And that's a connection that still continues with him. So he's very often asked questions about the BJP, about the RSS, and the Sangh Parivar. Not an easy task. So there's that. And more recently, he's had a very key role in fashioning what many people would say was the most unlikely and improbable alliance in Jammu and Kashmir between the PDP, Mufti Mohammad Zaid's PDP, and the BJP, often seen parties which are at the opposite ends of the political spectrum. We hope to hear a little more about him on that, and also about what lies ahead for the BJP terms of meeting its expectations. Mr. Prithviraj Chavan, again a well-known person here. He was till very recently Chief Minister of Maharashtra. All of us know that Maharashtra is one of the most industrialized states of India. And prior to that, he's had a long political innings. He's no novice in politics. He comes from a family, a very intensely political family. And after he first came to Lok Sabha in 1991, he has been pretty much integral to a lot of thinking that goes on in the Congress. He's somebody who the Congress leadership has looked to and trusted. He's done several roles in that capacity. He was Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office during Dr. Manmohan Singh's tenure as Prime Minister. And in that capacity, you would have all heard about his key role in negotiating the India-US nuclear deal. And in fact, his expertise in security, I'm tempted to hold him back for our next keynote as well. So there's that. And after that, he was sent to Maharashtra because he was, and I'm not saying anything very, this thing is, he was sent to Maharashtra because he has a clean image. So that was part of his job. So I'm very happy to have both of them here today. And I hope all of you join me in welcoming them. Our discussions proceed like this. The subject is new politics and new media. And we're looking at some obvious context here that after the uncertainty and suspense of last year, we have a government in which the BJP has a majority on its own in the Lok Sabha. First time this has happened in 30 years. But as Rajat very correctly pointed out, the job of governing is something that's going to be a challenge. And I think the Modi government is figuring that out. And it's presented its first proper full budget, but it's got the job of negotiating political deals through parliament on land bill, on insurance and other such subjects. BJP has done well. It's won several elections after winning the national election, but it's received a big setback in Delhi. So that also tells us that you can't take politics for granted. For Mr. Chavan's party, it's, I think, and he will tell us more about it, it's a period of reassessing, perhaps getting back to the drawing board, trying to rethink how you're going to look at the Congress party's relevance in the days ahead. At the same time, it seems to me that there are some initial indications the Congress party is still sticking to some of its essential socioeconomic programs like the rural job guarantee scheme, also the land bill. And we'll hear more about that. So, and of course, then we come to the question of new media. Is politics impacting new media? Is new media impacting politics? And so we'll start with both of them, setting out their views for us for about 5-6 minutes each, and then we go into a discussion, and then we get to the question. So I'm going to toss the ball to you, Ram, to start. Yeah, it's up to you. You can sit here and talk. That's fine. Whatever you're comfortable.
Easy from the podium.
Okay. The lectern is yours.
Mr. Chauhan, Mr. Deshpande, friends, let me at the outset thank the organizers of this conference. It has given me an opportunity to visit this prestigious institution once again. I came here several years ago. I was here for a small round table. It was very hostile at the time. I had tough time interacting with people. And also, I thank the organizers for inviting me to this very wonderful India Forum conference. Friends, let me start with an anecdote. When India was becoming independent, somebody asked Pandit Nehru as to why he preferred a democratic form of government for India. And his reply was, in my opinion, it is the second best available form of government. Naturally, the questioner persisted, what is the best form? Nehru's reply was yet to be invented. This shows our 6 decades of experience as a democratic country. We have a very vibrant, good democracy where people introduced as clean people lose elections. It's a vibrant democracy, yet we need to invent something better. Probably this whole talk about new politics is to invent a better way of running the political affairs, running the government of our country. I do not quite agree that new politics is a byproduct of new media. New media is certainly a very powerful instrument in achieving this objective called new politics. But new politics in itself is something that we all have to probably discuss, understand, and come to a kind of a conclusion. We are making some baby steps towards that in India. I see new politics as the real liberal, inclusive politics that we need in the 21st century. India is in a dire need of this new kind of politics for a couple of important reasons. We have a new demographic dividend today. India is, in a way, world's one of the ancient nations, but also a very youngest nation today, one of the youngest nations in the world, with a lot of young population. Our workforce in next decade or so is going to touch something like 500 million. We'll have the largest young workforce in the world. This youth has great aspirations in life. We have to have new systems in place that take care of the new demographic dividend, which is to India's advantage, but it cannot be handled by present type of politics. I describe it in 3 words. Mediocrity as the norm, loyalty as the test, intimidation as the order. That is our politics today. We have to get out of this kind of politics. We have to have excellence in politics. We have to bring in good people, knowledgeable people, people who are humane in their attitude, approach. They need to come up in politics. Before independence, politics was a mission for the people. It was a mission. It was a life mission. Many sacrificed their lives in the cause of the nation. Post-independence, it has become largely a family vocation. Nowadays, we have a new creature called professional politician. We have institutions in India that train politicians. I'm not saying that politicians do not need any training. They do need training. But this creature called professional politician is a new thing in India. Politics require passion. It's not a profession. It is a kind of a passion. You are there because you want to do something good for your country and your community. So we need people with that passion in politics. Ideology is important in politics, in public life. But ideology as something that guides you, that gives you direction, is what is needed, not something that creates barriers. We need to have ideologies, but that help create common ground, not create barriers between people and people. So there, I feel that while ideology is important, equally important is what I term as idealism. After all, the ultimate objective of any politics in any country I see as sixfold. In Hindi we call it Bijli, Sadak, Pani, Swachhata, Swasthya, or Suraksha. These are the 6 functions that government has to deliver. What ideology will say that, no, don't do this? So we need a new politics which is dedicated to achieving these things, committed to these things. We need new kind of politician who is passionate about these things. Politics for whom is not accumulation of power, but an instrument of service. I have studied political science. Chanakya gave this principle that a king has to lead the life of the last man, last subject in his country. If the last man in his country doesn't have a neat bed to sleep on, the king is expected to sleep on the floor. It's a tall order. But king as a public servant, not just a bureaucrat, but the politician as a public servant, is a concept that today we have to reintroduce in our political system. You know, when Chandragupta was asked to marry the daughter of Seleucus, Chandragupta protests because he was already a married man. And Chanakya says, king has no choice. What is good for the country, you have to do it. I'm not advocating polygamy. But I'm saying the way a ruler has to be, the way a politician has to be. For him, the interest of the country, interest of the people should be paramount. That kind of politics we have to bring in. Now, as I said, it's not easy. As I said, we are trying. We are making some baby steps towards it. It's difficult. It's a tall order. But with the help of committed people, I would rate the Prime Minister of India as one of them. But also with the help of committed institutional activity like the one we are talking about, the new media, probably we can move in that direction faster. New media today has become a major restraining factor on our politics. We think 10 times before taking a decision or before making a statement. You know, there were times when we would make a statement in the morning with one political objective in mind. That objective is achieved by afternoon, but by afternoon that statement also became controversial. By evening, we blame Deshpande for distorting my statement. This used to be the trick of the trade. Make the statement, achieve the objective, and distance yourself from the statement. It was possible 10 years ago. But with the advent of social media, it's no longer possible. One wrong word can spread in a few minutes like a wildfire. So it is putting some pressure on politicians to act. To that extent, it is good. The best part of it is new media is the democratic media. Earlier, we have outsourced this so-called opinion making to some intellectuals who would occupy the editorial pages of mainstream media. They are the opinion makers. But with the advent of new media, there is no role for any special opinion makers. Everybody has an opinion and everybody has a platform to air it. The most democratic institution basically which has helped us overcome this opinion makers, this elite class of opinion makers. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody is a politician, a social worker, an intellectual, rolled into one, depending on the situation. That is the power of social media.
Ram,
but
can I?
Last point I make and close. Last point I make and close. The social media can help bring in new politics by way of data, by way of opinions, feedback, by way of surveys. The new governments, like the government to which I represent, were trying to use new media to reach out to the people directly and get feedbacks, get data, get everything, which help better our performance. So friends, I will stop here with these few initial comments. Anyway, we are told that we will be at your mercy for next 60 minutes or so. Thank you.
Prithviraj, can I invite you to...
Thank you. Mr. Ram Madhav, my good friend Raju Deshpande, and friends, it's indeed a great honor to be speaking at this institution. My second time. I was also here a few years back. We are at a very interesting point in time in the history of our country. We have a new government in Delhi. And as Rajiv said, after 30 years, there's an absolute majority that the Prime Minister enjoys. He also enjoys absolute command over his party. Doesn't have to be looking behind his back if anybody is coming at him. And I think this is India's moment if the government really shepherds the country as we expected a majority government to do. The country will have to grow at a real growth rate of over 10%. If we don't do that, we'll be failing our future generations. Now, role of new media. What has happened? We are still analyzing how people voted. And I belong to the Congress party. I had to face 2 elections in 1 year, the national election and elections to Maharashtra State Assembly. And we got a bad drubbing, quite an unexpected defeat. And so naturally, we are still trying to analyze what hit us. It's very clear that the advent of technology, what generally been called new media, has had an impact. Few broad points can be summarized. One is no longer people are looking at 5-year time frame that a party gets to rule as per our constitution. What happened in last few days is what counts. People are not satisfied with whatever happens, even if you deliver a reasonably good government. People still want more. There's a huge impatience. And of course, the new digital technology, the new media, is extremely unforgiving. If you make a mistake, that stays with you forever. And small incidents, errors in communication, have really turned elections. And therefore, few lessons drawn, and that is the politicians who will enter public life will have to be trained. You cannot just depend on them to do it on their own. The soundbite politics will require specialized training for people in public life, whether in elected public life or as leaders of whatever professions you are going to take up in your life, whether as a corporate leader, whether as a leader of an NGO movement. You have to be trained to handle this new media, new people's expectations. Second theme that emerges out is that a role of political party, which is based on some ideology, either economic or social, is under stress. Elections are now being fought in constituency by constituency, not state-wide or country-wide. And there was a time when if you belong to a political party, and if you manage to get a ticket of that party, it completely assured you victory. It happened in some cases recently, but my experience from Maharashtra is that elections, particularly in the urbanized milieu, are being fought constituency by constituency. Parties do not matter much. The candidate's own capability of connecting with people, raising finances, has become far more important than political ideology. The second thing, direct communication of a political leader with the electorate, particularly through the media of television, has become far more important. In the national elections, we saw Prime Minister Modi very effectively used Hindi as a medium of communication. He was able to reach a lot more people through television. And so model of collecting a lot of people for a public meeting, a public rally has become totally irrelevant. And that has also brought in a great concern, that is the role of the media. And it is that the role of the owners of media. Most of the media houses are run by corporates, where profits and bottom lines are important. And there are issues whether a particular newspaper group or a media group which takes up a particular position is able to influence elections. And that's where social media plays a role, because it is not really owned by anybody. One thing is emerging out clearly, that political parties will have to become internally more democratic. If they do not become internally more democratic, more representatives of an ideology that they represent, then they face the great challenge of being irrelevant. Every party is reinventing itself. And I think they'll soon have to come to grips with what to do about internal democracy. Can it be done with legislation? Political funding has become a very, very crucial aspect of Indian politics. Can some legislative reforms be brought in through a political consensus, which is, as you know, very difficult? Otherwise, this first past the post system is under huge stress. And in such milieu, there's an opportunity that we propel the country to a much greater economic development, And that will require, like Rajiv rightly said, conscientious building. Not only because there is a political lack of majority in particularly upper house, but no major reforms can be carried out by a steamroller technique just because you have a brutal majority. You have to carry people together. And therefore, while I see a great opportunity for the country, if the government of the day misreads the mandate and takes country to a particular ideology, particularly Mr. Madhav's ideology, which he professed before he joined BJP, or rather became a full-time member of the party, I think there is a danger, and what we are seeing today happening causes us a lot of worry. If the secular character of the country, if all-inclusive character of the country is disturbed, then I think all bets are off. And that's why, on the one hand, we keep on reinventing our party, my party, Congress party, and every single political party is wondering whether people are now naturally voting for a more stable government. If you analyze Lok Sabha elections, some of the parties in the north, like the BSP and the Samajwadi Party, got almost completely marginalized. In my state, a small party called MNS completely got wiped out. Does it mean that people are now going to be voting for a more stable government by voting lesser number of parties, a two-party system, a three-party system, like in the West? Are we moving towards that? We have seen what happens in a coalition government. If that happens, it will be a good sign, and perhaps there is then space for fewer political parties with a clearly delineated ideology, economic or social, and then probably we will achieve the potential that this country has in the scheme of things. I think with these original, some starting comments, I'll rest here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we can sort of get into the discussions now. Some interesting thoughts came up there. Their opening comments, both our guests. Mr. Madhav spoke of his idea of governance was, to my mind, somewhat free of ideology. He was talking about basics of governance. Mr. Chavan also raised the question of the mandate, nature of the mandate. He spoke about the need for consensus. He also pointed out took the debate towards the issue of secular politics. I'm going to take up all these themes. I'll start with you, Prithviraj. You spoke about the need for consensus, but I want to start with asking you that do you think that the Congress party has been able to get a measure of Prime Minister Modi, in the sense that, is he surprising you? Is he keeping you off balance? I mean, how are you sort of reading his politics?
I think it will not be fair for me to comment on Mr. Modi, particularly in this forum. But there are worries. Frankly, how he'll handle the national economy worries me. He's completely engaged in foreign policy to the extent of sidelining the external affairs minister. He probably enjoys that. But I think he needs to be engaged with the national economy in much more direct way and needs to give direct direction. I was disappointed with the budget, that here was a government which got an absolute majority after 30 years. And this is the first budget of the government. This is the time to take unpopular, difficult, tough decisions in the national interest, something which needs to be done today. I think Finance Minister and the Prime Minister, I think, played it very safe. And many decisions which they could have taken, they avoided. And there were many promises, of course, of things to be done in future. I think some of them could have been done over 9 months rather than postponing them for future. With every passing year, it becomes difficult to take unpopular decisions. And so The second worry about the Prime Minister is that he is not able to contain the so-called fringe elements of the party, which is putting a tremendous stress on the secular politics of India. So much so that President Obama, when he went to India, had to sound out a word of caution. And just a few days later, there was an edit in New York Times which very specifically called on the Prime Minister to speak up against these elements, the attacks on churches and other things. I think the time for speaking up is gone. The Prime Minister needs to act. If somebody wants to eulogize the person who murdered Mahatma Gandhi by building temples and statues, I'm sure there are laws where you can actually move in and take action against these elements. But if it doesn't speak or doesn't take action, then what inference can one draw? Is he subtly supporting these elements? Supporting the original idea or ideology of RSS Pracharak? Going back to unification of the country? And that worries us. And if the secular fabric of the country is disturbed, then as I said, all bets are off on the Indian economy.
Okay, Prithviraj, I'm not going to let you off on the future of the Congress party. I'm going to get back to you on that. But yes, I do that. This was a bit of a soft opening ball.
No, I'm really surprised that Prithviraj Chavan is so much worried about my party than his own party. I'm trying to find out where are their leaders.
No, your party is
introspection. Let introspection.
There's only one Prime Minister.
Let introspection
okay.
happen in your party.
So Ram, would you respond?
Let it happen in India, please.
Okay. Can we have a couple of responses from you? One is that. What's your sense of the budget? Did it address the aspirations of the thing, or do you think, as Prithviraj is trying to suggest, that some tough calls were not taken? And the second is, obviously you've already sort of beginning to address that the whole issue is the Hindu right wing taking the government and the BJP in a different direction altogether.
You see, let me take the second point first. Okay. This is a very old rhetoric. Every time with new, today you take shelter in Obama and New York Times. This rhetoric has been there for you from the beginning. That's why people gave their verdict that what you are all propagating is not true. Either you have faith in Indian democracy or have faith in New York Times and President Obama. Indian democracy is vibrant enough to handle these issues. Coming to the secular fabric of our country, it is much more safe in our hands than in the hands of our predecessors. Yes, there will be elements in any society when it's a democratic setup. Are there no elements of racial discrimination in American society? Every day we open the same New York Times. Probably Prithviraj Chavan only reads New York Times when there is an editorial against India. There are innumerable writings against the American system here, how racial abuse is on the rise. Don't go by that. See if in India, this is the order of the day. In a democratic society, some element may say something. On the one hand, when there is a documentary which is not allowed in India, your own Congress party shouts from the rooftop, freedom of speech, etc., etc. But then somebody airs a view that I don't appreciate, you don't appreciate, Prime Minister didn't appreciate. Prime Minister said on the floor of the House, no, I don't subscribe to those ideas. Those people, if they were part of the party or the government, they were told to shut up. They were told not to propagate such ideas. But you still find a forum in Boston to say that India's democracy, India's secularism is in threat. We ensured best secular practices in our country. We will ensure that India's secularism will be safe as long as we are in power. I can't give that guarantee when you come back to power, if at all in next 10 years, if it happens. I doubt. You talked about MNS being wiped out. You are wiped out in Delhi. Let's give the examples equally. It's happening with every party. I appreciate it's happening. People are ruthless today. They may be ruthless with us. Who knows? They were ruthless with us in Delhi for certain perceived mistakes. People want best people in politics. Yes, if towards that, if there is introspection, it's good.
Can I just
let it happen.
For half a minute?
And about budget, I tell you.
Just on this point, on this point also, before you get to the budget, is that is there not some concern that these elements, whether you describe them as fringe elements, that is a small this thing, and the Prime Minister, as you say, has condemned it, but is there some concern that they may prove to be a distraction from what you hope to achieve in the next 5 years?
No, they are a good, what you call, your day is made in media. You have one statement, but there are no distraction to the government. I am saying there are in no way they are a distraction to the government. They are in no way distracting us from our focus of development. Whereas the single point agenda of the opposition seems to be to use whom you call as fringe elements. Use the statement of the so-called fringe element to stall the parliament, days on, not allowing the budget discussion to happen, not allowing any other institutional activity to happen. And you call it a fringe element. See, I think in India we need to have more mature politics. And I think we have to present India's case in a better way than the way we are trying to present here.
Just a quick comment from you on the budget, and then I must give Prithviraj ji the right to reply.
About budget, I would say, we have inherited a very bad economic situation 8 months ago, 9 months ago. In the given situation, to ensure that we have better growth rates, to ensure that our GDP rates, our growth rates are in the right upward direction, was the major challenge before the finance minister. I think he has achieved it in a commendable way. I see, we also interact with the industry, we also interact with people, economists. Everybody certainly agrees with the sentiment in the budget. But last 10 years of the experience in India is that you have very good English speakers as our finance ministers. They present budget in a very flowery language with Tamil quotations and all. But then when it comes to delivering it, they always floundered, faltered. So probably the expectation is that this budget, although it's good in terms of its sentiment, its ideals, its objectives and all, let's hope that the finance minister would be able to deliver. And I think that our government would be able to deliver on all those promises that we have made through this budget.
Okay, Prithviraj, one important point comes up here, and yes, I'm coming to you. That I also want you to address that is the sort of the idea of secular, non-secular politics that that Congress had in mind, and it sort of incorporated as part of its political vision. Has that to some extent run out of steam? I mean, in the sense that what you say, the points that you are, perhaps they're not resonating with the wider public anymore.
I think, Rajiv, let me first clarify one of the points and comment on some of the points that we made. First of all, we must decide whether the elements that we talk about are the fringe element or they are not. Okay. Mr. Madhav didn't like the word fringe element. That does it really mean that they are the mainstream of the BJP? And that's going to happen because there are ministers in the government who are saying that. There are heads of RSS who made some comments which are uncalled for. And the Prime Minister hasn't hit them on the knuckle or done something. A mild rebuke that we will not tolerate it. He has not taken action. The reason why I talked about BJP, I was not really talking about BJP. I was talking about the party of the Prime Minister. There's only one Prime Minister in the country. And I had to comment on what the Prime Minister's party or Prime Minister's people are doing. And that's why, of course, we'll discuss Congress's future. It's important. And about the statements coming out, these are deliberate pinpricks and goes with the ideology that Mr. Madhav belonged to, the RSS ideology. And that's what worries us. I'm not saying that secularism would get votes or won't get votes. I don't think the country can afford to give up the ideals of inclusive politics that we have nurtured together. Now, budget, the point I made was very specifically that this is a government after 30 years. Well, you have succeeded, you won, and congratulations, you've done well. It's a government which is without any coalition pressures, with an absolute majority for the Prime Minister's party, and Prime Minister enjoys absolute power within his party. He has completely marginalized other leaders, as you all know. So there is nothing to look back, and he just can do what he likes. And in that context, I said, I think Finance Minister could have been a little more bold, could have taken some decisions which are long pending. And let's not forget that we had a coalition government. And we tried to do a lot of things. Take, for example, the goods and services tax. We tried to bring it in. BJP's chief minister completely kept on opposing it. Now, they have espoused the cause. Similar in case of insurance sector opening up. Unfortunately, Bharatiya Janata Party, when they were in the opposition, completely played politics. Now, it's haunting them back when the right decisions are sought to be taken. They were right decisions by our government. So my comments on budget were only in the context of that this government has an absolute majority.
How would you respond to this suggestion that in some ways the budget did not allow you much room to attack them on social policies, because one of the areas which was supposed to be a vulnerability was that were they sort of neglecting the welfare aspects of it. And how would you respond to the fact that the Prime Minister suggested that they would continue with the rural job guarantee scheme, and in fact the fact that the scheme was there is evidence of the Congress's failures.
But that is rhetoric. The fact is that is a good scheme. If it is a bad scheme, then he'll be failing the country. He should stop that scheme. But that is hypocrisy. The scheme was a good scheme. There may be some shortcomings in it, but it has changed the social fabric of the poorest of the people. And there are no takers of that scheme in Gujarat, and not many people in Maharashtra, because these are already gone beyond that.
Okay, so we just continue with this a little further now. The Congress is the main opposition, and if we looking forward towards any kind of a stable government, either if the BJP at some point of time were to make way for some other government, we would look to the Congress party as of now. And right now, I don't know how hopeful the picture looks. So here I'm going to bring you to the point that whatever is happening in Parliament, let us say even the opposition sort of getting together to to stop certain Congress initiatives, BJP government initiatives. I don't see the Congress party really taking the lead in bringing the opposition together. It seems to me that Congress has become part of an opposition, is being led by the momentum of regional parties, going on to sort of take the thing. So where is the Congress's own leadership role coming through in it, and what should be done?
No, I think if you look at the composition of Lok Sabha today, Congress party is not a very large party. And therefore, there are many regional parties which are of similar size. And you cannot play a role of a big brother when you have a situation that we confront today. All of them are coming together and playing the role of a opposition party, which is there in parliamentary democracy. I think government has to work its way to build consensus. If there are objections, the objections should be overcome, and there could be give and take. Particularly in Rajya Sabha, they don't have a majority. It will happen. Not many people in the current government are experienced as ministers in the central government, barring 4 or 5. And they'll learn on the job. I'm sure they'll do a job later on. So I'm not too much worried about it. Congress party and the opposition parties will play a role of a constructive opposition. That we can, whether it states or in parliament, we'll continue to play that. But it's for the government to come forward, make sure that it's an acceptable proposition, and not particularly stick on formality, stick on point that, no, this is what I want and this is what I'll get alone. There will be difficulties.
Okay. Now I want to, since you're here today, and I'm very tempted to sort of, not allow you to leave some of the contemporary events in India behind, because, both of you are here today. So I want you to tell us a little bit about all the question of ideology playing a role. But ideology perhaps did not play a role in the BJP, PDP government coming together to some extent. Can you tell us a little bit about this? Because you've had a key role in putting together this alliance.
No, that's why I said we have to rise above rhetoric. We are in a new India. Even in the parliament, yes, as Ms. Chauhan has pointed out, the effort of our government has been towards mobilizing consensus to the extent possible on issues. It's a difficult situation for us because, as he also rightly pointed out, numbers are totally against us in the upper house. Nevertheless, Prime Minister and the ministers, they are learning, yes. They're learning the art of floor management, which becomes very important in such situations. It's important in India, future of the politics depends on how best you build the consensus on issues. Because the larger goals today are about the bread and butter issues of the common man. Now, I extend this very principle to Jammu and Kashmir also. It is true that the two parties which came together to form the government have major differences on political issues. But there is a mandate which has left the state with very few options. The other options are found to be not truly representative or truly respecting the mandate. The Chief Minister, Mr. Mufti Muhammad Saeed, has said it, we also said it, that it's not about arithmetic, it's not about numbers. Had it been numbers, or had it been so-called lust for power, probably the better arrangement for PDP would have been to join hands with Congress party, which was ready to, which has extended support to them, and muster the numbers. But there is a very difficult mandate. We tried to understand it, and we thought that probably if only we can arrive at a common understanding, I'm not saying consensus here, because we hold diagonally opposite views on certain political issues. But for the sake of those 6 issues I talked about, जो 6 मुद्दे सरकार के प्रायोरिटीज होते हैं, those 6 issues, बिजली, सड़क, पानी, स्वच्छता, सुरक्षा, and health, स्वास्थ्य. For securing these issues, these objectives, can we come together? Yes, it took for some time for us to discuss, come to a common understanding of each other's concerns. And there are areas where we disagree, which we explicitly said in our common minimum program. On the issue of special status, we have a different ideological position. On the issue of APSAPA, we have a different ideological position, which I think even Congress party supports, because when that discussion came up 3 years ago, Congress party took a stand in the interest of the country. So on political issues, we decided that we agree to disagree, but on the issue of coming together to give a good government, a stable government, we thought we will try and work together. I know it's a very difficult arrangement. Every day we are facing difficulties. And today I'm sitting here, I'm facing a lot of heat over a decision taken by the government there. Having said it, we are trying to give a good government to the state. I would say it's a difficult arrangement, all that you described. From my side, I would call it a historic opportunity for us. Historic in this sense that you have joined hands with the dissenter who disagrees with you on political issues. In the process, you both come together. You both travel some distance, which is in the interest of India and which is in the interest of even the state of Jammu and Kashmir. I think everybody should appreciate this point.
Prithviraj, it's very interesting because Prithviraj had also a role to play in the Jammu Kashmir affairs earlier. The previous government that was in office there, he had that. When you look back at it, it was a crucial decision to give National Conference the entire 6 years as Chief Minister. Yeah. How do you look at that decision now?
Well, when we formed the government back then, a clear understanding was that the power will be shared 3 years each time, except with a rider that will review the arrangement after 3 years. If we felt that things, obviously review means it was not an automatic switch over, but review. Review itself meant that there's a possibility that we could let National Conference continue. And I think the leaders of the Congress party decided that in order to have a stable arrangement, we should let National Conference rule for all 6 years. But then later on, strains developed and we decided to fight elections separately, not together. But I think it was a conscious decision at that time, when we actually came together 6 years back.
Okay, so let's take the discussion to the concluding phase before we go to the questions, is that this, both of you have suggested in various moments during this discussion that there is a possibility of consensus. And I wanted to ask you, is that do we have a prospect of meta issues such as development actually becoming dominating sort of political issues, given the fact that there are so many other strains of politics, whether it is secular, communal politics, regional aspirations, caste aspirations. Is there any, or was this a one-off thing that we saw to some extent in the national elections? I'll start with you, Mr. Raj.
No, I think as far as development and the national economy is concerned, it is built of so many different decisions that government needs to take. Legislation that is in the parliament, issues about what BJP had promised during elections, and they're finding it now difficult to implement them. Particularly decision about getting the black money back, and it's difficult. There are many decisions which Congress party could not take, were difficult to implement because either lack of consensus or lack of actually implementability. BJP went out because they were not in government and promising a lot of things, which they are now finding difficult to do, which is fine, accepted. That government has to go by
the lay of the land. Can I interject here to ask you that there was a sense that the Congress party always had a bit of a sort of uncertain or a two-way approach to reforms. There was one aspect of which that they were not terribly convinced about it. There was a political side of the leadership which tended to bank more on social schemes, and they weren't terribly sure whether reforms should be upfront. Has that dilemma to some extent been?
No, for example, let me tell you that Congress party is, after all, has been a coalition of ideas. There was a left of center mainstream, there was a right of center group which wanted to go much faster on opening up the economy. The left of center group didn't want to, and that is, first we always had to work out a consensus within the Congress party. After that, we went across to the allies and tried to bring them on board. And only after that we could go up to opposition parties to bring a consensus. My personal experience on the nuclear liability bill, we had to work very, very difficult negotiations on one hand with the Americans and the international community. Within our party, there was a left of center, right of center grouping in Congress party, then bring allies on board, which was very difficult. And finally, I personally had to talk to BJP leadership, to Communist Party leadership, that this was in the national interest. And I must give it to leaders like Mr. Jaitley, Ms. Sushma Swaraj, that they worked with us. They suggested some changes. We actually accepted them. But we had a legislation, I think, which was a landmark legislation. And that's another issue, whether the American private sector, those who want to invest in Indian nuclear commerce, would actually come out with the current bill. I personally have a take that the government will have to amend the bill as it exists today, without which the likes of Westinghouse and GE will not be able to come to India. But that's a different matter. I don't know. Okay. So consensus building in a parliamentary democracy is a constant process. You cannot sit on a high horse and say, look, I have a majority, I can steamroller through. That is going to be
So now is development a viable area to take politics forward? And also, when you address this issue, I also want you to sort of bring in that, where does the sort of BJP or the Sangh Parivar's concept of national culturalism fit into this narrative of development?
See, we won the elections last year on the plank of development. We are committed to our agenda, the agenda being the development of the community, of the people, of the country. Now, my urge to my request to the other people in the political spectrum would be that on that, let's argue. Like, for example, we have this land acquisition bill which is before the parliament today, some amendments that we have proposed. There can be great arguments about that. We can discuss, we can try and improve it, and we can take it forward and implement it in the country. On developmental issues, we welcome all sorts of disagreements, all sorts of arguments and all that. But on political issues, we have views. On those views, if people have any judgment to make, I'll have to wait for 5 years. Because they are not the agenda of the government. Agenda of the government are developmental issues. On that, come, let us argue, let us fight. But since you do not want to argue, engage with the government on that, if you go back to those issues and try and disrupt this process, it will not be good for the country. Having said it, yes, we are also, as I said earlier also, we are for consensus. We are facing great difficulty in the upper house, not because we are not making enough efforts, but there is a natural tendency for the opposition to come together. It happens. I mean, partly I attribute it to our failure also, because, the so-called floor management, probably we have to do it better. But I see the developmental agenda remaining as the focus area for our government. We will not be distracted by any efforts, whether done by our own political parties or by New York Times.
Okay, one last quick reactions from both of you. You want to respond to that?
No, I just want to say it is.
We'll go to questions a little later.
The government to make sure that this so-called fringe or otherwise agenda doesn't come to the discourse. It is not going to brought in agenda.
I have already reassured this.
For example, when a senior minister of the government says that Bhagavad Gita should become the national book, or when the chief of the party makes some comments about Mother Teresa, that the Maharashtra government has enacted a law banning possession of beef, 5-year imprisonment. And these are pinpricks which are clearly going in the direction of a political ideology or social ideology that RSS has. And this is not done by opposition parties. You are disturbing your development agenda by bringing these issues, which will become mainstream.
Where is so great a dispute over Bhagavad, somebody saying that Bhagavad Gita be a national book? You can say, no, we disagree. Over. Why do you think that it is a big subject to discuss in Boston? Because you have that mindset, you want to disturb it. You want to distract from, you have articulated it there. No, many in the audience would agree, Bhagavad Gita is a great book. Let it be treated as one of the national books.
So let us keep the development agenda by the side.
Right. So
take a decision on this.
You are distracting the subject by raking up
we
the
didn't bring it up.
No, we discussed in why here. What is so relevant for us to discuss about it here?
Okay, last a few quick reactions from you on new media, in the sense that, how is, so Prithviraj, let me ask you first. So did new media, and I think it did, hurt the Congress in these elections? How do you see that?
Well, I think we were taken by surprise. The impact of the social media, particularly going down, penetrating to the distant villages, the way information flowed instantaneously, the way public meetings became irrelevant, the importance of television in going to the people's house, and the importance of oratory. And there was a time when, right, if you go back to the Greek days, politics was all about public speaking, about oratory. And then later on it became less important. We had captive audiences which you collected together and spoke and gave some ideas. The political manifestos were printed. This time BJP did not even have a political manifesto. They completely dependent on direct connect with people, and they succeeded. Must give full marks to people who planned their strategy, and they used the social media or the electronic media, new media, much more effectively than us. And I think somehow the impression went that Congress party is anti-industry or anti-industrial development or whatever, and this government is going to be very friendly. So those who control the media supported BJP fully.
Okay. A response from you that yes, the social media perhaps worked to your advantage, but it also created a lot of expectations. And what does that mean for you? This can go, the mood can change very quickly.
No, see, social media is definitely is a new phenomenon in India. I do not deny that. Social media has become very powerful also. I do not deny that fact. But to say that the election results are only because of social media, if that is all the introspection that is happening in Congress party, it concludes that, because of social media we lost, or because of some good Hindi speeches by Narendra Modi we lost. If only speeches could win elections, Atal Bihari Vajpayee could have been the Prime Minister of this country. It's not speeches. It's not about just a tool. You are attributing everything to the tool. It's a tool. The message, the content, what you offer through that tool, through that instrument is important. We have offered better things through that instrument. Probably Congress could not offer that. Having said it, Congress also wins seats in a number of places. How do we explain that? There, are we saying that social media has no impact there? Larger point is what we offer to the people, whether through speeches, or through mainstream media, or through this alternate new media, or through our cadre, or through our network, is accepted by the people, and it is not accepted by
now
them.
I think we should just, I'll have to sort of stop there and we go to, I think there are a lot of questions here.
Yeah,
so the procedure is like this. I think that you raise the hand, I identify the person, then you move to either mics on either side of the room. Quickly identify yourself and your question, because then we hope to get in as many questions as possible. So I hope all of you would be mindful for that. Okay, we have one gentleman there. You can start with. Please introduce yourself and, and your question, please.
My name is Sandeep Mule. My question is to Sir Ram Madhav. You talked about new politics, which should be bereft of mediocrity, intimidation, and loyalty. But your government has your government changes the GDP, fudges the GDP numbers. That's mediocrity for me. You talked about loyalty. Your government has people who are accused of rape and corruption. They are part of the government because of loyalty. And the third is intimidation. People, the Greenpeace activist is being stopped. There is documentary being banned. People like Yogi Adityanath. They are roaming around. So how do you explain that? You say you want to talk about development, but people will ask questions based on your actions, not what you talk.
Now, firstly, I deny your allegations. Firstly, okay. Let me on record saying that we have fudged numbers and all that is a baseless allegation you are making. Okay. Number two, about certain actions of the government. For example, this decision to ban a particular documentary being aired in India. This was an opinion generated within the parliament by various political parties across the spectrum. There was a large hue and cry in the parliament, leading to government taking a particular action. Now, subsequently, people are changing their views. People are saying, no, you should not have done that. In India, it is possible. You say something in the beginning and things go wrong, you say something else. This is happening. We will see, we will handle it. There are views both ways about that particular documentary. People want it aired. People do not want it aired. In India, government in its own wisdom took a decision. That need not be construed as going against liberal thinking and all that. No, that's not correct.
Okay. The gentleman to my left.
Yes, my name is Ken Silverman. I'm head of North America for a company called Sonomus 4 Consulting. And for the last 7 years, we have been bringing corporations, universities into India. We're a market entry specialist. And often I am asked, and this is for Mr. Madav, and hopefully it'll be an easy answer for you. What is said is that the words have been terrific relative to the future and Make in India and all the rest of it. But can you cite a few tangible examples of how it is easier and better for in this case, U.S. or international company to come into India and do business than it might have been a year ago or 5 years ago?
Yeah, firstly, we have increased the foreign investment cap in many areas. So that helps many companies, not just from US, but anywhere in the world, to come and invest more in India. Number two, a company sees the investment climate in India. I would like to say that the climate in India for investment is much better than it used to be some time ago. Number three, we are doing away with a number of archaic laws which have been a major impediment in bringing investment into our country. That way, there are a number of laws in our country which have become a big impediment to our own people in many areas. the government has identified more than 1,000 such laws, which will be gradually repealed after again building consensus in the within the political spectrum. Number 4, the bureaucratic hurdles will be reduced. It will be easy for companies to come and work in India, working towards that. That also should help companies come and invest more. Basically, the bottom line is you have to create a conducive atmosphere in the country. Climate should be conducive for a foreign company to come and invest. I think we are able to create that kind of what we call as investor confidence in our investment climate in India.
I think, Rajiv, the question was really, there have been a lot of talk, but what has happened on the ground? If there are 1,000 laws that have been repealed, and how many have been repealed so far?
No, we need your cooperation to repeal them.
Okay. Did I see somebody up there? All right. Okay.
I am Pradeep Kapoor. I was ambassador of India to a few countries, last being Chile, and secretary to the government of India. I am currently professor at the University of Maryland and advisor to a few groups such as Intellect Design Arena, Business News Americas, and others. I want to compliment both the speakers, Sri Ram Madhav and Sri Prithvi Raj Chavan, for the very interesting comments and insights. I want to flip the discussion a little bit towards the other side. We heard that we will need in the future some sort of formalized, training systems to be put into place for politics, for public policy. Now, this has a not a very attractive name in India or in some other countries also, politics or even public policy. So the study of public policy is very, very small. Just as an example, in one university in the US, like the University of Maryland, we have more than 2,000 students at the postgraduate level studying public policy, and more than 50 students doing PhD. In the whole of India, we do not have any comparable numbers today because of this stigma also, which is attached to it. My questions to both the speakers are, how do we make the study of public policy more attractive? Do we think there is enough study in this area at this point of time? What are the steps we are taking to rectify it? And what are the ways which we can correct it so that this stigma also in the medium term, short term, long term gets somewhat corrected? Thank you.
Yeah, Rajiv, a very interesting question I'd like to respond. The Indian system of first past the post. That's how we elect our representatives and rulers. Not necessarily the skills required to win the election is completely different than the skill that is required to run a government. And that's where it's not possible in a country like India to have a meritocracy in the government. For example, today I find the current government has got a lot of new people who have never ruled before. And I think there is a case argued by many in Indian media that they should get some technocrats in the government, but that's for the Prime Minister to decide if you don't have enough of people, specialist people. In a country like United States, where it's possible for the President to appoint anybody to any position in government, like a government minister or secretary, it doesn't happen in India. And therefore, unfortunately, the skill required to win an election is completely different than skill required to run the government as a minister.
Ram, your thoughts on this?
No, I agree. I mean, there are two different things, winning election and running the government, but it applies to all parties. It applies to Indian not politics, just, it applies to Indian politics. Yes. Having said it, in our government, we have, as economic advisor, a trained economist from Princeton. We have, as head of our Niti Aayog, a trained economist from Columbia. There is increasing initiative in the direction of attracting competent people. It has happened before also. Dr. Manmohan Singh, when he joined the government of Mr. Narasimha Rao in early 90s, he was an outsider to Indian politics. So this is a process. Probably we want more such people. more scope for such people to enter. How to achieve it? Probably Congress and BJP coming together can work on this. It's a brilliant idea, and especially the idea of having them as part of our bureaucracy. The so-called lateral entry into bureaucracy is a good idea. But how do you put it in place? How do you create that kind of an understanding between major political parties and achieve it? It's a romantic idea, good idea. I welcome it.
I think my point was to get the technocrats into the government, as ministers.
Yeah,
not as advisors.
You have ministers who are competent. I mean, I don't want to name them. Your finance minister, your commerce minister, our commerce minister, our railway minister.
This tension between sort of meeting the political needs of the party and government and governance, I think it's a useful subject to look at. We have a question to our left.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hi, my name is Bhavna Lal. I'm a medical doctor, and I'm also a graduate of the Harvard Kennedy School. My question is for Ram Madhav. So you speak about development in India. How do you hope to promote development in India and the women's role in society, in Indian society, given the recent silencing of a documentary on gender-based violence on women?
No, see, totally two unrelated issues. In India, banning a documentary for a particular reason, whether right or wrong, it's being debated in India as much as it is being debated outside. It has nothing to do with our view on women and their participation in public life. We as a party, forget about as a government, have always stood for encouraging more and more women to participate in public activity. We have provided 33% positions in the party to women at various levels. Now, it is the duty and responsibility of all of us to encourage more and more women. We are fully committed to that. Women have to come in large numbers in public area, public life. I tell you, this time, the Republic Day parade, the focus was the empowered Indian woman was the focus of our Republic Day parade. The parade was led by a woman soldier. And we had many women contingents leading the march. The idea is to highlight it. The idea is to popularize it. India has a very typical social milieu. In that, you have to create a kind of a encouragement, create a situation where women come forward in big numbers. We offer it.
Okay, we have a question there.
Hello, sir. It's been fantastic here in the morning time. My name is Anupam Raghuvanshi, and I come from Varanasi in India. After finishing my higher education in Columbia University, I headed back to my hometown and to my home country. Much to my disappointment in your government, sir, the air was very obfuscated, and we were like absolutely not understanding, I mean, if the decision was right. Now, we saw as a youth of the country and being from the Prime Minister's constituency, there was an air of, some positivity that we actually relate to. Now, in your deliberation, you mentioned government has to take some tough decisions. So my question is with Prithviraj Chavan, sir, what is your, I mean, if you can enumerate some 5 points to clarity, the tough decisions that you want the government to take, and Mr. Madhav's counter on that, which are the tough decisions that you still will be taking in the next 4 years of this term?
Well, I think off the top, I can, again, coming back to economy, and the social issues we can debate them much later. But for example, a decision like implementing GST, which will add at least 1.5% to the rate of growth of the GDP right now. We don't have to wait for it. I mean, government must use all its political power to make sure that it's a good decision, which you opposed all through when Congress was trying to bring it. But now that you've seen the light of the day and you know that it's a good decision, a common market within India, that should be done tomorrow. Let's do it, and if Congress party opposes it, expose us if you want to. But it was we who wanted to champion it. And I think decision like that, we could argue about the GDP growth rate numbers. I don't want to call them fudged number, but they are being questioned. But one thing is definite, that our economy is today, because of the work done in last 10 years, whatever you may rate, the numbers are there for you to see. It's one of the fastest growing economy. But 7%, 6.5%, 5%, 8% is not going to be enough. We at least had to grow at 10% rate of growth only to get some real per capita incomes comparable to the developing world.
Okay, but we don't have till tomorrow, I'm afraid. So the last two questions, I'm going to go here and then there.
Hi, good morning. My name is JJ. Welcome to Harvard and welcome to Boston. It's good to see all of you here. At the same time, I don't follow Indian politics that often, but with my limited understanding, I feel it's very interesting and very unpredictable. And it becomes weird when Mr. Kejriwal and Kiran Bedi, they fight with each other just for, against each other for Chief Minister of Delhi or something like that. But I would like to know from as a leader from politics, do you think we have any time limit? We love our country, there is no doubt about it. But are we in the right track? Are we proceeding towards a change which brings India as a superpower, or as a country which has ethical and educational values which other countries are learning from us? So I would like to know from each one of you, if you could just explain, are we on the right track, or are we with some time limit to make a change in the country? It's a broad question.
Should we set some targets for ourselves?
No, as a government, we have targets. We are in the right direction, we believe. And you don't have to wait for too long to see that things happening in India.
I think the new government got a bonanza in form of low commodity prices, and it's a great opportunity. I think if you work together and government brings in the best brains that are available globally into the government or as an advisory role, and with one single point agenda that we have to increase our growth rate, real growth rate to double digits and all that, and continue that growth rate over the next 10 years, then only we'll be able to make a frontal assault on poverty. We still have unacceptably high poverty numbers, and we cannot just be satisfied with business as usual or saying that, okay, we are trying to do the right thing. I think we have to really have a frontal attack.
Ma'am, the last question is to you.
Hi, my name is Manisha, and I'm currently getting my master's. What I wanted to ask was to go back to the documentary. I still need to understand why it was banned. In the news, there was specific political leaders that had said that it was banned because it would make the tourism rates go down, and it was banned because of India's image. But as an Indian woman, I would like to know why it was banned. I would like a specific reason why.
As I mentioned, there was this view in the parliament when the Home Minister was asked to respond. The view in the parliament was that this documentary was violative of certain government norms as well as certain social norms, in the sense that in India generally, when such incidents happen, we do not expose the victim. That's our practice in India. We do not let outside know who is the victim and all. This documentary, probably, I haven't seen the documentary, so I cannot really comment on what actually is there in that. Certain such concerns were raised by members of parliament from different political parties. Responding to them, government announced a decision to not show it in India. And it has requested BBC also to refrain from showing. Probably there could have been a better way to handle it, in the sense that BBC and government could have come together and decided about what portions are really objectionable. Probably we could have had some kind of a discussion, but now it's all over now. There is debate going on in India also, as much as I said, as much as you are concerned. Many people in India are also concerned about it, whether it tantamounts to the so-called infringement on the freedom of expression and all. These issues we discuss and we take appropriate decisions.
No, I think the point here that there are different views expressed in parliament and otherwise, but it's for the government to take a stand after considering those views. The government has taken a stand to ban the documentary. It will be not possible for Indians to see it in India unless they violate the laws and all that. And the corollary question to you is, are you going to see BBC correspondents being arrested now?
No, I really don't know what will be the procedure. I don't think it will go to that far, but I must remind Mr. Chauhan, the demand first came from Congress party.
Okay.
But the government has to take a call.
Now you can blame us because they should
all right, we reached the conclusion. Dr. Basai, can I invite you to just give the final concluding comments, please?
Thank you, friends. I do want to thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity. I'm not a Harvard graduate, but I am parent of a Harvard Law School graduate. The talk about the role of new media in the politics of India, I'll start by commenting or quoting Charles Holland Dewey. He was the Commissioner of Patent for the United States. He was probably not a Tea-Party activist then, but he sent a report to the United States Congress that the US Patent Office should be wound down in 1899 because everything that possibly could be invented has already been invented. And when I give my talk at the medical school, I'm a professor at Indiana University Medical School, I start with quote, what he thought then and what has happened now. But he became wiser, and I aligned my remarks with his another quote in 1902. There is no question that the media, the new media, are playing an important role in trying to change the thinking of the people by better education, giving them better understanding of what's happening. And as the younger generation acquires this ability, either through the internet or through use of smartphones, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, it's going to change the spectrum. I think Narendra Modi was quick to recognize this potential of the younger generation and the new media, and he had used several consultants to help him in this regard. The app also used it more in Delhi. In the last election, I remember on 22nd of February 2013, when I met Ram Madhav at 11 o'clock in Delhi, and then 4 p.m. with Prakash Javadekar, I asked the question, what's going to happen next year? And he said, Bharat Bhai, there are going to be 110 million new voters in 2014. And we don't know how they will swing the elections. Now, elections are not fought simply on what the media tells, but media certainly influences them. In the last election, the BJP had a swing of 14.4% votes in their favor as compared to 2009 elections. Did it all happen because of the new media? No. As we realize, unfortunately, there are many poor people in India. There are many people who live in the villages who don't have access to smartphones. Yes, a lot of people have smartphones or wireless phones, but they don't have all the features. Unfortunately, there are many corners of India, states like Bihar being the poster child, where the politics of caste, the politics of religion makes the people vote, not necessarily what you learn by new media. So this phenomenon of new media influencing the voters by better education is going to continue. And in the elections that are coming, I'm sure they are going to play the part. What happened in Delhi, I do want to make comment. Apparently, it looks like that BJP was kind of subdued severely. But if you really look at the voting pattern, in the last election, BJP got 33% of the popular vote. In the the next election, BJP got 32.1% vote. So they did lose 1% vote, but they lost a lot of seats. What happened was that the Congress party lost 14% of the vote, the other parties lost 10% of the votes, and all those votes, instead of being divided, ended up going to AAP, and it looked like that AAP became the big winner, which they were in number of seats. So the new media, Delhi being a small city where there are a lot more government servants, a lot of educated people who have a lot more access to media, did make the difference. But I still believe that it's the ideology of the party, how the people perceive what is happening in the country is still going to be the main thing that's going to decide how the people are going to vote. The media serving as a tool to educate those people. So that part should not be underestimated. I think one of the reasons what happened in the last election, and I was surprised that that topic was not touched, people of India had a very negative perception about the corruption and the scam. Yes, it was the politics of development that Narendra Modi rightly championed, and he championed it in Gujarat, and it worked very well. But there are a lot of people who are fed up with corruption, scam, inefficiencies of the government. So there was as much vote against Congress or the ruling party UPA as there was for the Narendra Modi's positive agenda for the development, and especially the youth who are so eager to get the jobs. They are looking at their future. They want development. They want to raise their family. And we know that the government cannot give jobs to everybody in the government sector, as we learn what is happening in the Greece. So my feeling is, to sum up, yes, the media will continue to play a positive role. As the years go by, there are more and more younger people who will come as voters, and they will be more influenced by the media. And if I quote again in 1902, Charles Holland Duell, who had retired by that time as the Commissioner of US Patent Office, he said, "In my opinion, all previous advances in the various lines of invention will apparently totally insignificant when compared with those which the present century will witness." He said, "I almost wish that I live my life over again to see wonders which are at themselves coming." So he was very right in 1902, and we have noticed the revolution. More things have been invented in the last 25 years than they have been invented in the history of mankind. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our first keynote session, and I invite all of you to join me in once again thanking our guests.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, esteemed guests. It was a very well-contested discussion here, and just to bring the temperatures down, we have a small caricature of the guests here. Shreyas is one of the students here, and he drew them especially for our guests. So.